Hello and welcome back to my studio. Having spent the last few days completely sorting out my oil painting stuff, in true Evans fashion, I've suddenly felt the urge to do a watercolour. So here we are, all set up to do a watercolour. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet. I shall make it up as I go along, but it will be something to do with where I went out with the dogs today, the woods at Allen Waters in Fly. I'm not sure whether I'm going to do it as a today picture or whether I'm going to make it summery or spring-like or even autumny. So to start with, all I'm doing is giving paper a good old wet. I'm not sure what paper this is. I think it's Bockingford. It seems to be behaving like Bockingford, squidging up an awful lot of water. The reason I'm not sure is while I was sorting out my studio, I came across a whole pile of sheets of paper. Some of them I could recognise quite easily, others I wasn't sure about. But it's definitely £140 rough. I think it's Bockingford. Right, okay, while that's soaking in, I'm going to let you have a look at my palette. People have asked me about it, so basically the bottom bit here is a Ron Ranson type palette. There's lemon yellow, there's also cadmium up there if I feel like using cadmium, lemon yellow, raw sienna, burnt sienna, light red, alizarin crimson, ultramarine. That is basically the and Payne's grey. Then once you get past the Payne's grey, there's translucent grey, neutral tint. That is indigo. That's Charles Evans sand. That's Hooker's green. That's yellow ochre. That's burnt umber, olive green, cobalt, cerulean, oxy, whatever it is, purple. That is rose madder, Perol red, transparent orange, Aureolin, and no, that's Chinese yellow, that's Aureolin, or however you say it, and that, as I said, is cadmium. Basically that's a Ron Ranson palette. Add some of these over here, you've got my Charles Evans colours. Then the rest are basically bright colours for me to use when I feel like using bright colours. Definitely Bockingford, you can tell it's swollen up in the middle. It will dry perfectly flat. So before I do anything else, I'm going to put in a middle wash of raw sienna, just to warm up the centre. I'm using a Ron Ranson hake. I'm in a Ron Ranson-y sort of mood today, so I'll whoops, earthquake. So there we go. That's very wobbly at the moment. I'll let that dry in and run down a little bit. I'm also using a new setup with my lights, which I'll keep bumping into, so you'll have to forgive that. Well, you won't have to, you can turn me off and never watch me again if you like, but I would like you to please forgive me if I keep bashing into things. Right, just mop up the bottom there. Always a good idea to mop up your bottom. Right, the edge has gone off that, so I'll do a sky wash next. So ultramarine with a dash of alizarin, and that there is a little tiny bit of Payne's grey. Quite a lot of paint, there's quite a lot of water there as well, but I want it to soak. Just doing one of my favourite things, which is watching paint dry. Paints I'm using, by the way, are mainly SAA watercolours. I really like them. They're very concentrated. Right, that's some light red, which I'm just going to dip into the sky here and there. And let it run in, let it, and a little bit more ultramarine, whoops, too much water. Right, just tilt that a little bit more. And now I'm going to get a bit noisy because I'm going to give it a quick blast with a hairdryer. leave that. It's not completely dry, but it's the edges off it now. It'll still bleed a little bit, but it won't take too much of the paint I put on top of it. Now the next bit I'm going to do with one of my lovely Stratford and York Jets. They're brilliant brushes. I've no idea why Stratford and York went out of business. They arguably made the best brushes in the world at one time, and then all of a sudden they were gone. Quite a long time ago. Right, okay, shall we take it? Yeah, it looks quite a warm sky, so I'll do a fairly warm, summery, springy day. Okay, now distant trees, ultramarine, touch of yellow ochre, bit more ultramarine. So we've got a sort of grey colour, still quite damp. And these are squirrel moths, but look at the shape on that. It's years and years old. Now there's some trees in the distance. I'll put smaller ones blocking our escape. Well, I've got that colour. I'll add some Payne's Grey and ultramarine, touch of umber, and I've got a grey path. Yeah. Now I'm still using this lovely brush. I'm going to do some undergrowth. Oh, actually, well, before that dries. This walk where I go with my dogs very often, it has some beautiful old trees, and one of them, the huge black poplar, many years old, with loads of intertwined trunks. I've taken loads of photographs of it over the years. But it came down in the storms a few weeks ago, and it's there with its root ball sticking up in the air and lying flat like a dead giant. But I walked past it today, and lo and behold, it's got new buds coming on it, even though it's lying on its side. It's not dead yet. It's absolutely lovely to see. I'm not going to give in, it's saying. It's just wonderful. Right, so I've mixed up a brown, which is raw sienna and raw umber. Mixed up there. And I'm going to put some of that as undergrowth. Just catching the paper. I am hoping, I'm absolutely convinced this will flatten out. And as it comes forward, I'll add a little bit more blue. In fact, I'll go all Charles Evans and add a little touch of Hooker's green to that. Never use Hooker's green on its own, but it's a wonderful mixing green. You put it with absolutely anything and it mixes beautifully. I've never seen it not make a good colour yet. A touch of yellow ochre as we come forward. Now, some proper grass, which is Hooker's green, yellow ochre. Bit stronger. Now, while this is wet, I'm going to use some of the, oh, that's light red. Yeah, light red. Just blob it in there, here and there, let it spread out in the wet paint. Bramble leaves or whatever. Remember, watercolour always dries quite a lot lighter than it is when you put it on. You can see by that sky now, that was all purpley before. Now it's getting itself into blue. Okay, kebab stick. Too wet. Use the fingers. The pointy bit I'm doing on purpose because I want dark bits in there. You make a little groove in the paper and the paint runs into it, whereas when you do that it takes it out and you get light bits and dark bits. Okay, now give it another blast. See how it's all gone really light, where the light's coming through there. When that's properly dry, I can put some yellow in there, make golden light come through it. So now, back to the hake, harke. I'm sure Ron called them hakes. Look, years old and it comes still to a really strong point. Okay, raw umber. Payne's grey. Lots of Payne's grey. Lots more raw umber. A touch of blue. And it's time for some big trees. Well, medium-sized trees to start with. Bit too wet. Add a bit more brown to that with the burnt sienna as we get further forward. And a big bugger right in the front here. Twins. Actually, I'm going to make some sort of hazely trees there. So I shall use, I haven't got my rigger on this here, where's that nice little thin brush? There. That one will do. It's not the one I wanted. Yes it is, it's a sable brush. Pro Art, rather nice. Now I'm going to into that dark, I'm going to put some more, well not more, but some light red. Now I want to change these into sort of like hazel bushes. and some nice thick branches coming off here. Thin some down for trees further away. Right, just before that's dry, we mix up a nice strong yellow ochre. Just a touch of light red. And since I've done the heavy lines on that side, I'll put some lights on this side of the trunks. They should blend in quite nicely. Just to give the trees a little bit of form, some solidity. And they should blend quite well without me having to do much else to them there. Some on that one. Now, get my smaller hake and mix up yellow ochre, just a hint of hooker's green, there we are, yellow ochre, hooker's green, sort of nice summery green there. and just skipping it over the grain of the paper. Mix some more. People very often say to you, be very careful when you're mixing colour because you need to make loads of it so you don't run out. That's rubbish. You can always mix it again. Now, because I put the light on these sides of the trees, I'm using my brush strokes to go that way so that that's where the light's coming from. I said it's a spring day, so I don't want huge amounts of leaves, just an indication. Still using this hake, some more of the hooker's green, and this time I'm going to put some ultramarine into it. Hooker's green, ultramarine, tiny touch of light red, and I've got my shadowy colour for that side of the leaves. Bit too much water. Now where this is still wet, it should blend together quite well. Some more little bits of darks. A bit of alizarin into that dark mix. Bash the brush. Got a lot of the big bits in. Now I'm going to go back in with this pointy brush. There's some bits where it's gone a bit blurry where I don't want it to go, so I'm going to reinstate some of the shadows. some nice darks. This is Payne's Grey and Burnt Sienna. Burnt Umber. Raw Umber. Get there in the end. Actually, right, okay. Now I'm going to get my little 3/4 inch squirrel square, which I love. It's a beautiful brush. And with that, I'm going to start with, while I think about it, I'm going to mix up some Hooker's Green, Ultramarine, and a touch of light red, which gives me that absolutely luscious dark green. And these trees I want covered in ivy, so I'll put the dark all down that side. And take some of that down here and put some yellow ochre into it, and I'm left with the light side. And the yellow ochre is much more opaque than the other colours, so it tends to dry a lot better. I'll come back into there with some more shadows later. Little bits on some of these, well, put some of these two greens splodged about in the undergrowth. And I'm mixing up some lemon yellow. I'm doing this all back to front, but I'm not, because I'm keeping the... In theory, you should put your lightest colours on first, but I'm putting this over the palest whites and light colours. So that you can still see it. and you can see where it's going. And because it's overlaying some of the others, you get these rather nice glazes where one goes over the other. I make no excuses, I love bright colours, especially now. We've had a pretty rotten couple of years, haven't we? So why not have some nice bright colours? Now there, where it's gone white, remember I said I was going to save it and put some light. Here we go. Now we've got a sort of glow now in the distance. Some of this really bright green. Now I am going to grab my rigger. There he is. It should have been in with all these watercolory ones, but I washed it yesterday as I've been using it for oil paints and it needed a bit of a wash. So really dark now, ultramarine, alizarin for a nice purpley colour, and then Payne's grey. And now against this glow you put some dark branches and put some shadowy bits in here. I always find, well, it's not that I always find, it's a fact, that shadows make your picture. They give it form and shape. You try painting a white flower under flat light and see how difficult that is. You turn a spotlight onto it and you've got shadows which make the shape. some of that purpley colour into the dark green. And that gives me a nice shadow colour, which my trees are casting. Look at that bright yellowy colour on that edge, some of the dark shadowy colour on this edge, now I'm going to mix some almost pure purple into that green. Because the purple will sing against these lovely yellowy colours. Light red, more or less on its own, just to pick up some warmth in there. And I'm not mad keen on that bit. The two most opaque colours on my palette are yellow ochre, well no, two of the most opaque colours are yellow ochre and this lemon yellow. Now in that no, can't do it. Sort of camber on the path. The main problem with this now, I'm looking at it, is the price you pay sometimes for making it up as you go along, and that is I've got no real point of interest. Do a big deep shadowy bit there. And because I've got purple, if I put lemon yellow next to it, contrast will help. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to pull something out there and put a figure in. So yeah, here. No, it's too central. There. Put mummy and daughter, or mummy and son, or daddy and son, parent and child walking along there. Now, where's that pointy brush? And I'm going to use this Pyrrole red, which is, so my research tells me, the purest red you can get. And mummy can have a cerulean blue top. Now, very dark brown, burnt umber, and I'll use some of that indigo. Just put a little head. Some little legs, pure dark ultramarine. In my pictures, everybody wears jeans. Now give them some shadows. Tie them to the floor. And mix some of that bright red with a tiny little bit of the Charles Evans sand, which is almost a gouache sort of thing, and put some lights on her coat. I'll let that, in fact I'll blast it. Little shadowy bits. Their little doggy. Right, now I think I'll put some more deep shadows there. I'm faffing now, somebody tell me to stop. Now I'm going to use the sand colour very thickly with some yellow ochre. Just put in some little highlights where the sun's catching this ivy. Just to give it a little bit of sparkle. Same here. Odd flicks just where it's catching the light. It's almost like using white gouache, but not quite, because you can mix it without losing the watercolour integrity. Don't think Charlie used it like this, but I'm sure he won't mind me doing it. Little sparkly, sunshiny bits. There we go. I think that's more or less done now. Just take the tape off. I'll be honest, it's a matter of personal taste. I actually like the little white border that you get, almost like a mount. Some people don't, and some people will prefer to stretch it as they go, whereas I quite like the idea. Now that is drying flat. So there we go. That will be as flat as a board by this time tomorrow. So there you go. Spring walk or something of that ilk. Just a quick little watercolour, because I fancy doing a quick little watercolour. So thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it.